All right, everybody, and we are back with the Seven Figures or Bust podcast.
So back.
Happy Monday, episode 85, number one podcast in the world for growing your insurance business. I'm your host, Christian Brindle, joined with my co-host, as always, Glenn Shelton. And we've been off a week, brother.
We have. Traveling the world.
Traveling the world.
As seven-figure agents do. Yeah, seven-figure agents do.
Changing lives, impacting lives, doing very important work down in southern Florida. Some things have happened while we were gone. Don't know if you've heard.
I know. I think the news, our main topic today that we'll get into here a little bit later, I believe this came out. I remember, didn't we discuss this while we were on South Beach? If memory serves.
We did.
I believe this. Yes.
We did indeed. And, I wanted to kind of start off today's show. We have a couple of topics to go through. The one in question, that's the main topic that we'll address later, is, CMS raising Medicare Advantage payments in 2026 and kind of talking about what that means, how you should interpret that as an agent. But prior to that, the last show that we did, it wasn't even really a show. We didn't do a podcast, really. It didn't go up on the podcast platform.
Yeah, that's right.
Was a live reaction to CMS dropping a final rule. So kind of the way that this transpired, for those of you that are not routine listeners, the last show we did was April 3rd on a Thursday. Final rule drops April 4th on a Friday. So we did a live stream in the Facebook group, specifically also the YouTube channel, the main YouTube channel, and kind of dove into it. Within 30 or 40 minutes of this thing dropping, thank you, AI. What kind of world do we live in today, thanks to AI? Very interesting. I wanted to start off by asking the question, having a little time to digest that a little bit, maybe hearing some other things since then. What are your thoughts a week and a half, give or take, removed from that news? Because we were kind of reacting right on the spot. First reactions in that live stream.
As we do, as we're known to do with Final Rule.
Speculation of sorts.
We typically drop Final Rule. We're typically going to CMS saying it's time. Tell us what's going on.
I think it's clear to anyone that's watching. I mean, when Final Rule drops, CMS will coordinate with us so we can explain it to you, because they Christian
has the equivalent of a bat phone in his office that goes to CMS. That red phone when it rings, Final Rule's dropping. No, that's a great point, because at the time, you can find that reaction video here in the group. If you haven't seen it yet, definitely still recommend taking a look at it. As we were trying to piece this apart in real time, I did have some concern where it's like 480 pages. Are we going to get truly to the meat of this document? Can we offer any meaningful insight in real time? And believe it or not, here we are almost 2 weeks later, and I would say we pretty much hit the bullseye with what that document was, after seeing others talk about it, after getting a closer look at it myself. The only thing that I saw come up, and this was like a comment, this wasn't even anything that I saw any substance to, but there was a reference to Medicare agents and becoming like a fiduciary duty. That was the only thing I saw come up, and I haven't heard anything else about it. But outside of that one comment, I feel like everything we discussed in that final rule was very accurate. Nothing about marketing guidelines, nothing about agent compensation or FMOs or overrides or, trying to limit what sort of commission or payouts that we can get as agents. So that was obviously a breath of fresh air. If you look at that live stream, you'll see Christian and I were in the middle of it. We're trying to figure it out. Concern. When Christian called me originally, he's like, "Hey, Final Rule just dropped." I was like, "Damn it." I was like, "No, it's Friday. No."
Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, CMS says. But yeah, that's my opinion though. So what are your thoughts though after having almost 2 weeks to digest here?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the same. I mean, there were a couple of things, that maybe impact an agent's life just a little bit, but more so that has to do with, the coverage and the benefits for the beneficiaries that we service, right? Not really anything to do with compensation or anything like that. An
Right.
example of that, one thing I didn't catch, because really, we mean it when we say we literally took 20 or 30 minutes from the time it got on our radar to go live and start reacting to it. It was like no time at all. So like there's little things in it, like for example, Inflation Reduction Act set a $2,000 cap on all prescription drug costs that a beneficiary can be responsible for. That's raising to 2,100, for example. Like it kind of, in 2026, very minor change, but it's something to be aware of. So like I didn't catch that the first time going through it, in the quick, study of it that went through. But for the most part, there's nothing in there that I have seen that does impact agents in any regard to the same degree that the previous 3 years of final rules have. Very tame and very surprising. I still am a little surprised because I can't remember a situation where, especially as of late, this was kind of like the last hurrah for that current CMS leadership. It was their last day in power, so
Which
I was
scared. That was part of my fear too, for sure.
I was fully expecting a middle finger on the way out,
Same, for
and
sure.
and in addition to that, right, like they dropped a proposal that was looking as scary as any final rule we've ever seen at the end of Q4 with their change of definitions of communication and marketing. So usually, especially with that leadership, you would maybe not see that exact ruling passed about the proposal, but it was a version of it. And so I hadn't seen that CMS leadership put out a proposal and then just basically not put any of it into a final rule. That was very surprising to me.
I think it's a good time to mention too that there was some misinformation that was going around when final rule dropped. I know. Who would have thought? I know. Who would have thought? I saw someone sharing screenshots, what looked to me like reference, and these were just screenshots of written text. Like someone just typed something out. There was nothing on there that actually linked to anything of actual evidence that it came from CMS. But it looked to me like someone was sharing stuff from what the proposal, and I believe it was in January or December, where it was December. Yeah. So that proposal, which again, Christian and I have already kind of discussed previously, had a lot of crazy stuff in it. There was essentially some language in there around marketing where all communications would fall under the same type of compliance that marketing rules. So, you basically wouldn't be able to communicate to your clients unless it was cleared by CMS, which is insane.
To put that in perspective, for those of you that don't know what that means, like some of you might have YouTube channels, right, where you put up like educational content. We certainly do. You'd have to submit to CMS to before you posted a YouTube video that mentioned anything about Medicare. Yep. And the average turnaround time, I mean, you've gone through this on the marketing side, but I've always heard the average turnaround time, and I've seen this personally, 3 to 6 months to get an approval from CMS. So like you'd have to submit approvals and then wait to 3 to 6 months to post your YouTube video or your post on your business page, or a letter to your clients, any of that, and so I mean, to say radical, like I'm trying not to be extreme when I say that, but I think it would, if that passed as was written, it was more radical than anything they had tried to pass the last
100%.
3 or 4 years.
And just to recap, that did not pass. That language was not in final rule. That was a proposal in December that had language around that was very, bizarre. There is a comment here from Maxine, and I'll take a second here, guys. Freebie Friday happens every single Friday in the group. We didn't have the podcast last week. We did a giveaway anyways, because we are committed to giving away free stuff to you guys every single Friday right here in the 7-Figure Medicare Agent Facebook group. So all you have to do to enter is comment on one of the live streams from this week. Every time you comment on a live stream, it counts as an entry. So up to one comment or one entry per live stream. So up to 4 potential entries on a normal week. And then we do a live raffle right here in the group every Friday. Great question here from Maxine, though. Do you think any stunt could get pulled at the last minute, like dropping agent comp or PDP plans entirely? What do you think about
that? Not from the CMS side. I mean, could you see it on the Medicare Advantage side from the carrier perspective? I guess anything's possible, but I think we'll get into that in the main topic, because I think that does relate to what our main topic is going to be. So it's hang around for that, because I don't want to start talking about something that really is a very viable question that ties to the main topic today.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. The one thing that is still hanging in there, I'll mention now, is last year's final rule. Correct. You know, we were hoping to have an answer from the court system by the end of March, beginning of April. Here we are. We're halfway through April now. Happy tax day tomorrow, you guys. If you haven't filed yet, it's probably too late, but we're halfway through April and we still haven't heard anything out of the Texas court system, which is where the stay has been placed on last year's final rule. That is something that's been, you know, a big thing on my radar from the start of the year, and we're still kind of just sitting here waiting to hear what's going to happen. So I'm not worried about this year's final rule at all. I'm more so wondering what's happening with last year's final. I have not heard it. Have you heard anything in the woodworks?
Not a word. And to me, I feel like the longer this goes, the more likely we get a similar scenario from the past year, because what ended up happening the past year was, you know, this thing dragged and dragged and dragged, and then it was kind of decided that there wasn't enough time to implement the changes going into AEP. You got to think about it from a carrier perspective, an FMO perspective, and of course an agent perspective, an agency perspective as well. These things take time to adjust to and make preparations coming into AEP. And so you could make the argument that it's just not fair to spring something like that when there's so much uncertainty, right? Like, and that was kind of why it got pushed into this year, and it just seems to be continuing to drag. It wouldn't surprise me at all if this thing just got thrown out at this point. Like, how long does this have to go? You know?
Well, especially with the new administrations come in, new CMS administrator is officially in power.
Currently at his desk.
Currently at his desk, in his jet. We don't know where you are. In Glenn's office. We don't know exactly where he is, but
I heard Oz is in a standing desk in his jet working on CMS affairs while simultaneously checking his stock prices on various insurance companies.
He is on a walking pad with a standing desk. He has all of his stocks up on multiple screens, and he's just talking to the carrier CEOs, figuring out how to get those shareholder value right.
So you're saying if I throw out this final rule that my stock will go up 8%? Where do I sign?
Yeah. I feel good about it though. Overall, you guys, for sure. I think we're in a good spot. I think from where we were in January to where we are now, I think there's a lot less uncertainty. But again, that final rule from last year is still kind of hanging in the air, right? We still don't really know.
Still kind of looming in the shadows. And, you know, it is a thing to pay attention to, but as of right now, there's really no news on it. Before we get into the sponsor, I did have something I wanted to kind of
Yeah.
mention on the pod. I've been known from time to time to give book recommendations. I just finished one over the weekend.
Oh, little
Spent a lot of
bookworm.
time reading it on the planes, finished it over the weekend. I really enjoyed it. I started reading it years ago, and I read maybe the first couple of chapters, and I just, for some reason, never picked it up, kind of forgot. Very good book. Highly recommended. It's called The E-Myth.
Oh, that's a great one. I've read that one.
A classic, right?
Yeah.
By Michael Gerber, an older book, right? Put out in the 80s, 86, I want to say it came out. But for a lot of you that struggle with running businesses that just consume you, that just,
Yes.
that, you're doing everything yourself, you are unorganized, you're just up to your eyeballs. That's a really, really terrific, fantastic book. I took a lot of little nuggets out of it that I feel like we can implement into our company that I might have not, seen or had blind spots on. So highly recommend it. I try to give you guys book recommendations from time to time. I'm trying to get back on the grind of 2-3 books a month, clipping them out 2-3 books a month. Like I did years ago.
I believe there's a sequel as well. Didn't he do
Yeah,
2.0?
there is.
Yeah.
I haven't read that one yet, but like most great books, right? Like The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, there's the whole book on the 8th habit. They have to keep it going.
Right.
Just like Terminator 4 or 5, doesn't mean usually I haven't read the other books. So I don't want to say that, but a lot of times you watch Terminator 1 and 2 and you're good. You don't really need 3 and 4 and 5. And
I know I read all of the first E-Myth. I was actually also on a plane. I was in the Philippines reading that book. And I remember feeling the same way, that it was very insightful for how you can better structure and organize your business.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of has a 4-hour work week flavor to it. So I've really loved it. I highly recommend that book as well. Great book. I don't remember 2.0 though. I feel like I may have picked up 2.0 and then not finished it. That's kind of what my brain's telling me right now. But I'm sure 2.0's probably got some good nuggets as well.
Yeah, but I'm a little behind. But so far this year, second book I've read. My goal is like 20 this year. So
let's go.
We'll see what happens. And I'll continue to bring you guys recommendations as I read more and see if there's any that might tickle your fancy as a listener. Let's move into the sponsor of this episode, episode 85. Glenn, who's the sponsor? Who's our sponsor today?
The sponsor for today's episode is the 7-Figure Medicare Agent Summit. You guys, we are just 68 days away. We are just over 2 months away from the 7-Figure Medicare Agent Summit in Salt Lake City, June 22nd to 24th. We could not be more excited about this event. This is going to be the biggest and best 7-Figure Medicare Agent Summit yet. We are planning on having more agents there than we ever have. And right now you can pick up a ticket for 30% off. So normally it is $500 to get into this 2-day event. Right now it is just $350. So you can save $150, put that towards your airfare, get out to Salt Lake City. Again, June 22nd, June 24th. Could not be more excited about the speaker lineup we have, the vendors that will be there, the other agents, the networking opportunities. It is going to be a fantastic event you will not want to miss. So I will make sure that the link is in the comments below on this live stream. If you are listening to this on an audio platform, head over to, you can either go to 7figuremedicareagentsummit.com. If that's too long, you can also just head over to 7figure.com, SEVENFIGURE.com, and grab your ticket today before they're gone.
Mm-hmm. And they will be gone.
They will be. More.
All right, let's shift gears into the main topic. I feel like there's a lot to be said about this.
Let's do it.
Okay, so first off, let's kind of get into the details a little bit about what's actually happened. So while we were gone, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services announced that they would be raising Medicare Advantage payments to carriers by 5.06% for 2026, amounting to over $25 billion in additional funding. How that compares to the recent years, it's certainly not the highest it's ever been, but it's higher than it's been the last couple of years, which really, I mean, that amongst other things, I would argue has contributed to benefits kind of slowly kind of deteriorating the last couple of years in a lot of areas and on a lot of plans, causing disruption. Inflation Reduction Act certainly had a lot to do with that too. But here's how the last couple of years compares to that number. Okay, so 2026 can be 5.06%. 2025 was 3.7%. 2024 was 3.3%. 2023 was a huge year of 8.5%. So it's not the highest of even the last 5 years, but it's higher than the last 2. And that's where we've seen probably, the most disruptive impact of everything the previous two years or so. When you saw this, Glenn, what were your thoughts? Or do you want me to go first?
Well, I remember, so when this news broke, and again, I'm pretty sure this was last week, sometime around Tuesday, we're in Miami. Meanwhile, the stock market was in a free fall. The dichotomy of this was the most beautiful part of it. It just gave me that reassurance, like a warm blanket, that reassurance that we're in the right industry. That was my favorite takeaway from this whole thing. Is the entire United States economy in this moment was in a free fall. This news breaks, and the Medicare Advantage carrier stocks specifically were all trending up. Because again, this is positive information, right? This is an increase in revenue going to the insurance carriers, right? Which is fantastic, right? I mean, if you're an agent, this is the news you want to hear. So I was elated to hear this. It should beat inflation, or at least keep up with inflation, right? So good news for Medicare beneficiaries, good news for agents, good news for uplines. I would say this was good news for everybody. I loved it. But I'd love to hear, what was your reaction when you saw this?
Yeah, it's exactly what I wanted to see. I reiterate everything that you just said. What agents need to understand is, kind of circling back to that last question we had earlier about what is the likelihood of commissions being cut, things like this. Again, commissions being cut will come from the carrier level, not the CMS level. And the only reason it'd come from the CMS level is if it was put into a ruling by CMS, which it wasn't. We have the final rule. We know what's in it. The carriers can always still make their own call on what they feel like they can pay, or, if they can pay on a certain product. But that being said, carriers being more profitable and getting more funding reduces the likelihood of commissions being paid. I cannot stress that enough. So it makes it far less likely, right? If you look at last year, when we saw a lot of carriers just basically cut or stop paying commissions entirely on PDPs, caused a big ruckus. Then during AEP, kind of in an unprecedented move, you saw a lot of carriers stop paying commissions in the middle of the year, in the middle of AEP, on various plans, suppressing plans, only paying commissions on paper apps to make it more difficult for you to enroll those plans. Part of that was the Inflation Reduction Act. Another part of it was their funding was low. I just read off those numbers of what it was for 2025 compared to what it was 2 years ago, or certainly next year. Funding was low. So there's only positive things that can come from carriers getting funded better for us as agents. It's not only better for us as agents, it's better for our clients, because the carriers are required to spend the vast majority of their funding on the benefits on those particular plans. So the more funding they get, the more coverage and the more benefits they can provide on certain plans for Medicare beneficiaries. So I think it's good for the clients. I think it's good for us as agents. It's a good sign. And it's, I
Yes.
think, a sign of where things are headed. And I've said this kind of from the beginning. My expectation would be, without knowing, not having a crystal ball, but my expectation would be that we're moving into an era of a carrier friendly and a friendlier agent CMS leadership.
You know, a lot of you, just like the question we got earlier in the live stream, a lot of you are always looking for the writing on the wall, right? And we all are, right? As agents, as agency owners, you know, I when I talk to seniors, right? I mentioned this, I think, before on the podcast. I was talking to a senior last month, and they were really concerned about where Medicare was going from their perspective, right? So I think everyone's always trying to look for writings on the wall or read between the lines, like what's the crystal ball saying? Where are we going? What is the future going to hold? And while I don't think anyone can say for certain what it is, this is the type of information, this is the type of news that should tell you, it gives you a little hint, it gives you a little guidance, and is, again, this is a green flag in my book. This is a positive indication. Just like, again, the stock market's in free fall this day that this news comes out, all the Medicare insurance carriers, their stocks going up. Great news for all of us from top to bottom. And like you said, I think this is a sign of good things to come, not just immediate good news, but, between final rule coming out, between, this increase of payment to carriers, it would be great to not see anything like last AEP for a long time, if ever again, because that was chaos. I think we can all agree that it was chaos, seeing plans drop out, carriers having to cut comp on PDPs. I mean, it was just chaos.
Mm-hmm. And I think, like, one thing I thought that was funny about last AEP was, like, there were certain heads of large agencies with a lot of agents and things like that, kind of like getting a little defensive about last AEP, and they'd be like, this is the best AEP ever. We're seeing all this production. But it's not for your agents. Like, a lot of that production is them moving their own clients around. They're rewriting their own clients. You're seeing it as their upline. Oh, look at all the production. Wow. But it's not new business to the agent. They're just working that much harder to retain their current business. Now, were there agents that maybe were newer, didn't have a big book, took advantage of the opportunity? Certainly, I think that's true. But I think for the majority of agents, there's an agency owner that I know in Georgia that had 1,000 of his clients terminated on plans.
I remember this.
1,000.
Yeah.
Didn't get to them all.
How could you, right?
It's impossible. Unless you just have a really strong staff team, everything
right?
like
LOA
that,
team.
right? The
Yeah.
LOA team, customer service team, like. Everything Senior Insurance has got you covered. We provide a free CRM, in 7-figure CRM, to all of our agents that meet the proper requirements on their contracting and have enough contracts with us. We provide discounted leads with Lead Heroes, discounted virtual assistants with Hire Heroes. And we provide just year-round support to just be there and help you out in your business, as well as fantastic training. Glenn, what do people need to know about Everything Senior Insurance, the FMO?
At Everything Senior Insurance, we've really combined all of our resources to create an FMO that can be a true one-stop shop for a senior insurance agent. Most FMOs have only maybe one resource or even no resources beyond offering that contract. We want to provide value to you as an agent to help you grow your book of business. Or if you want to create an agency, we want to help you grow your agency. And there's so many resources that we have put together to really help you grow your business. So if you are looking for a true partnership, someone that will invest in your business, please reach out to Everything Senior Insurance. We would love to help you grow.
Thanks for listening to this message. And now back to the show. 10 plans. It's like, do you
Yeah.
really need all these plans? What if you had
Right.
2 good plans,
Right.
like 3, but no. And so I haven't seen that email yet, just because I haven't got a chance to check emails today. So I'll take a look at that. But my first reaction to that is WellCare is going to WellCare.
Yeah, that was my thought too.
I would think.
Okay.
I would think. So here's the thing. Every year you see carriers grow their list of non-commissionable plans. It's not just this previous year that we've seen this. I think this previous year we saw the most attention on it because of the way it was done and the timing and everything. That was weird, happening in the middle of AEP and things like that. But every year carriers, the list of non-commissionable plans gets greater, but also the list of plans they have in general, like we were talking about, gets greater as well.
Yeah.
So I would argue that the percentage of plans that are non-commissionable versus commissionable hasn't changed all that much over the past couple of years. And just because WellCare does something doesn't mean I would expect most of the other carriers to do something. I don't think most of the major player carriers are watching to see what WellCare is going to do and then mimicking it. I just don't.
UHC is like, okay, what's WellCare doing now?
What are we going to do, sir? We're going to wait for WellCare. I don't think that's happening.
WellCare, also known as the market mover in the Medicare space.
Don't get me wrong. National carrier, right? Publicly traded company, big company, but I don't think they're looked at in the same light as a lot of the other really major name carriers. So like, I'm more interested in what, the bigger names are going to do. It's also such a WellCare thing to announce that now for 2026. Like why now would you announce that? Why not wait until your first looks come out, for next year? So
Nicole just said, correction, the plan suppressions are effective April 2025. So I guess there was some information that was pertinent to now, but
okay, fair enough. Yeah. I think that's kind of my take on it. I'll be interested to kind of see how some of the other carriers kind of react to it. And, I've never looked at it as a big problem, because just looking at the percentage of commissionable plans versus non-commissionable plans, I would argue it hasn't changed that much over the years.
Yeah. I think, again, this kind of goes back to like that Chicken Little atmosphere where some of you are wanting to see signs of an impending collapse of the Medicare industry. So, the Chicken Little agents out there see headlines like this, or they see this information and they latch on to it as proof or evidence that the end is coming, the end is near. But I remember specifically several AEPs ago, I think it was like a list of Humana non-commissionable plans that was either being discussed publicly, or maybe it was something I was kicking around with one of our bigger Lead Heroes clients at the time. But yeah, I mean, non-commissionable plans from on the MA side, that's always been there. It's always been a thing.
Can I use an analogy that might be controversial?
Please, let's do it. We're halfway through.
Why not? Right? Okay, I believe that with these things, if you look historically, they ebb and flow, right? The pendulum. I often use the analogy of the pendulum. The pendulum swings back and forth, right? Going super extreme, super scary, to lightening up, everything looks good. I think about this latest Disney movie, this Snow White movie.
Oh boy.
And I'll tell you why. Flop.
You weren't kidding.
From all intents and purposes, right? Like, and you could talk about why you think that is, right? Et cetera, et cetera. But that movie was made in 2022 during a time where the content of the movie was like kind of socially encouraged. It drops in 2025 where the pendulum has swung the other way, right? So like, some of these decisions you might see this year could be interpreted as leftover remnants of what happened with the Inflation Reduction Act, AEP last year,
Sure.
just an ever-changing market, right? You're not going to see probably changes like that. You're probably just not going to see that. So like Disney puts out this movie that might have been a little less destroyed by the critics in 2022. I think there would have been people that destroyed it because it was just an abomination from what I hear. I didn't see it, but do you ask yourself if you've heard about this story, would that movie have been ripped apart like it is being in 2022? I would argue no.
Probably not. But they still destroyed the original plot.
For sure. I still think it would have gotten a lot of criticism. And this actress, I mean, she's the gift that keeps on giving with some of these comments that she makes. She's a gem. I want her in every movie.
Disney's gonna put a gag order on her. No, but the analogy is super accurate in the sense that, like the Inflation Reduction Act, when something gets passed into law like that, regardless of no matter what direction things go from there, there's always going to be this continuing effect. It's like a ripple effect, right? Like when you throw a rock into a lake, like it's going, there's still going to be some remnants of it, for a while, regardless of the direction that things are going. But I'm still super in favor of a consolidation of Medicare Advantage plans. When I finally came to the realization and understood how many plans were in some of these markets, it's just silly. It really is. I don't feel like it's beneficial for anybody. I don't think it's beneficial for the Medicare beneficiaries or the agents and brokers.
And I think if you look at it, right, like we had that situation that came up with a client at Lead Heroes in this past AEP where, the perception was totally different than the reality, right? The argument that was had was, I can't utilize these leads because there's no commissionable plans in my area, the vast majority. So we do some checking and I don't remember what the numbers were off the top of my head. I think it was like 35, 40 commissionable plans and I
think it was 34.
Yeah, 34
if I remember,
commissionable plans.
34 commissionable
and
plans.
4 non-commissionable plans.
And
so it was just one of those things where now here's another interesting kind of part of this that agents will ask with this. If a carrier doesn't want a plan sold, right? So if WellCare is bringing out that change, it means one thing. It means they don't want those plans being sold. They're not profitable for WellCare. So the question then becomes, why doesn't WellCare just terminate that plan? Why don't they pull the plan and just, be done with it? The reason being is because CMS punishes these carriers significantly on their star ratings the following year based on plan terminations. How many plan terminations? So it's better to tank a plan and just, let it ride and just be obscure than to terminate the plan. And for those of you that don't know, the higher star rating a carrier gets, the more funding they get from CMS. And so that's the game that these carriers are playing, right? I've seen it for years. There's a plan in our market that is still around today. It's been around since 2006, I want to say. Nobody's on it. I mean, there might be a couple people on it. They won't get off. It's $200 a month or more. It's worse than all the $0 premium plans. It's a bad plan. I'm sorry. But the carrier won't pull the plug because it hurts their star rating. So it's better for them to just ride it out and wait for everyone to get off the plan or pass away.
It's like tanking in the NBA to try to get the number 1 draft pick.
Yes.
That's the same type of you're playing, you're bending the rules a little bit to try to get something.
For those of you that didn't know, Sam Hinkie is in charge at many of these carriers. Sam Hinkie, the former 76ers GM that took tanking to another level. Sorry. I know
mentioning the NBA. That was a dangerous thing to do here 40 minutes into the pod. I was going to try to reference earlier that the playoff picture is set, and I believe the play-in starts tomorrow.
I saw.
Maybe tomorrow morning. Maybe on tomorrow morning's pod, we'll spend a couple minutes for those NBA aficionados who listen. I know you're out there. We try to feed you guys as often as we can.
I mean, as much as we can steer away from Medicare, we will try to do it.
Yeah, on our top producer trip, you guys, and I wanted to spend some time, maybe tomorrow too. We can talk a little bit about that, but
yeah,
we kept waiting for the conversation to shift away from Medicare. It's like
it didn't.
Day 1, all Medicare. Day 2, all Medicare. Day 3, we're like making jokes how we can't not talk about the business. It's just like nonstop talking. It was great though. It was great.
I remember there was a moment where you went into the water in the beach.
Yeah.
And we're talking about Medicare. And the rest of us were just sitting around talking about Medicare, talking about the industry, things like that. There's enough time that passes from the time you're gone that I have time to get up myself, go into the water myself for a few minutes, come back, lie back down, dry off, and then you finally come back and the conversation has circled all the way back around where we're talking about it again.
Yeah. I'm like, I remember when I'm like, oh, it's still going. Okay. You can't. Even on South Beach in Miami, the conversation still is Medicare. We're still talking Medicare. But maybe tomorrow morning, I'd love to spend a little bit of time talking about the top producer trip. Yeah, I think that'd be great. But to get back to the main topic here, CMS raising Medicare Advantage payments. So your feeling with this is some added insulation to this concept that there's not enough money to pay agents. Is that kind of how you feel about this increased funding for carriers?
I do, because I think it's all dollars and cents, right? It's all a math equation. Like if the carriers get paid more, it's easier for them to pay us. If the carriers get squeezed, we might be one of those things in some perspective where we look a little expendable. Not entirely, but maybe that's a situation where you have a WellCare that are making 10 additional plans non-commissionable in the middle of the year, right? Like, or carriers not paying PDP commit. It's like things like that. That is kind of a little bit of a domino effect, I believe. And everybody wants it to be a conspiracy. Everybody wants it to be, behind the scenes, these carrier reps.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a little bit of, I don't know. I don't think so. I mean,
I think there's a little bit, but it's not the, what's the Justice League? What's the antithesis to the Justice? What's the bad guys in the Justice League?
Oh, I have no idea.
No idea. This is gonna kill the League of no. This is gonna kill me.
Yeah, I don't
Something
know.
Doom.
League of Doom? I don't know.
League of Doom. You should know this. You're the nerd here.
I was never a big Justice League guy. I like the Avengers more.
I'm gonna have to do a quick Google. This is killing me.
I think that let me preface my comments. I think that there are carriers out there and people in high-ranking positions at carriers that if they could find a way to not pay us and continue doing business, I think they would. But I think most of them believe that they're better off with carriers than without carrier. Or excuse me, they're better off with agents than without agents. And so I think, you see situations where carriers are being squeezed and it's undeniable, like situations with the Inflation Reduction Act kicking in. They're at a point where they're at their lowest raise in their reimbursement than they have been for many years. It does stand to reason that correlates with when we see some cuts on our side, right? Like, I don't think that's a wild take to have or a conclusion to make.
It's, by the way, it's the Legion of Doom. I was going to say the Legion of Doom. So in the cartoon, who's Oh, I think Manta Ray is one of them.
Okay.
Lex Luthor, Black Adam,
Me?
Cheetah.
What's
Yeah,
Lex-
you're
Lex
in
Luthor?
it.
Christian Brindle
Christian's
is
in it. Yeah, Christian's in it. But no, in the cartoon, I remember as a kid, like they have like this evil layer that can like go like under the swamp, right? It'll like pop out of the swamp, or they can be like under the swamp. And some of you, I feel like, think that's what some of these, Medicare Advantage executives, some of these insurance carrier executives, that they're getting together like it is some sort of super villain group like the Legion of Doom, and they're all, planning, we're going to use AI and we're going to eliminate the agents once and for all. Like
when we win, they will cry for mercy.
Superman will not be able to save them.
I found the kryptonite and I will use it to kill Superman. You're not
You are
so
Lex
super
Luthor
anymore.
You are officially Lex Luthor now.
We
have the soundbite. We have the
Nicole-
soundbite. Jake, clip that. Clip that.
Nicole had an interesting comment. I wanted to kind of react to it. And great point, Nicole. Numerous carriers at Medicarians said to definitely expect another tough AEP for 2026. So here's my thoughts on that. How can a lot of the carrier reps that you're talking to at these events are not the ones making the decisions. For one, like I knew more about final rule and what was in it last year than most of my carrier rep connections. Most of them didn't even know what it said. They're like, oh, we're just waiting for the top to tell us what to do,
Right.
Like, and I have some pretty high up there carrier rep connect, and they're amazing. I love them. But like, the people that are really in the know are not at those events sitting at the booths. They're just not. And then in addition to that, how can they possibly know that before the CMS numbers come out? Like there's so many, final rule hadn't come out at that point yet. The decision on final rule for last year hasn't been decided yet.
Right.
CMS increase on payments hadn't been decided yet. Like I feel like it's a wild thing for them to say when, number one, likely they're not really that much in the know as they want you to think they are. And two, all this information hadn't even been dropped yet. Like, how can you possibly make that assessment?
Maybe it's like a prepare for the worst thing where
they're
wanting to put that. That's the only thing I can think, right? Is like logically, why would they say something like, because I totally agree with you. Like there's so much information between now and AEP that could change the direction of how AEP goes. So to already be saying, batten down the hatches, we got another bad storm coming here in 6 months, seems premature.
Let's say Medicarians ended 2 weeks ago. Fair?
Yeah.
Over the past 2 weeks, what has happened? Final rule dropped, and it didn't have anything to do with us. Very positive. Carriers see an increase in funding for 2026, right? Like two major things happened. So like, and two things that were being waited on by carriers to make decisions, right? So like, I don't know. I just feel like it's a silly thing for them to be telling people when you don't have all the details. You know what I mean?
The only thing that I feel like you could legitimately say that we already talked about on today's pod is the residual effect of what we saw last year.
Sure. Yeah.
Which that's legitimate, I think. The Inflation Reduction Act, the fact that regardless of how things change from here, I do think there will be kind of some residual effect that we'll see going into this AEP. But to already say it'll be a rough 2026 AEP, it seems premature to me for sure.
Yeah. Remember last AEP? We're running it back. We'll see it. We'll see in the fall. I think that's a little irresponsible at best.
Imagine being a carrier rep and that's your message. You're like, did you hate AEP last year? We're running it right back.
I probably wouldn't be a very good carrier rep. I would say things like that just for fun,
There's no way. There's no way you could be a carrier rep.
I'd be like, stop calling me. I don't get paid enough for this.
The carrier's not going to tell you this, but I'm going to go ahead and go off record here and tell you my thoughts.
Wait, I have 1,200 agents I take care of, and they're all calling me at once.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, no, I think that's just kind of my thoughts, like I wouldn't put too much stock into a lot of that stuff. The thing is, and there's a lot of carrier reps that we work with, and I think they're amazing people. There's good carrier reps, there's bad carrier reps. This isn't a blanket statement, but like a lot of them they're kind of like marketers and FMOs. They want you to feel like they have all the answers, but when you really start to peel back what they know, it's kind of limited sometimes. Like they're not in those meetings, they're not that high up on the food chain. Just like you, they're probably waiting for a lot of information to come out that they're not just privy to. They'll talk like they are. They'll talk like they're in those meetings. But if you're in a meeting like that, are you going to be in that meeting one day and then standing at a booth the next day?
No.
I would probably say no.
No. That information's being trickled down. And again, I could see the company line being like, hey, prepare the agents for potentially another rough AAP, even though we really don't know yet, because maybe they feel like their agents were blindsided a little bit last AAP because maybe it was worse than some people expected. So maybe from a customer service standpoint, if the agent's your client as a carrier, I could see it being like, hey, prepare for the worst, but then, over prepare. And then if it's smooth sailing and the waters aren't as bad, you're going to have a great AAP. That's the only thing I can think.
I think that is such a strong analogy too, when you think about it, right? Like, how would you prepare your clients for something you don't really know, right?
Yeah.
You don't really know what's coming, but how would you communicate it to your clients? Like that is so spot on, I feel like, right? Like, because really at the end of the day, for a carrier rep, if they oversee you or anything like that, you are a client of theirs. You're their client. Yes. They directly benefit from your level of activity or productivity. They want to have a good relationship with you. They want to communicate. They want your trust, right? So they don't want to promise one thing and then it just goes south the other way. So it might just be like setting expectations, preparing for the worst, but not really knowing what's going to happen. I think that is such a good analogy because it's so true.
I just won the podcast, you guys. I just won episode 85.
We have a winner. I wanted to take some time and kind of move into final thoughts, just make sure that we have enough time to kind of really dissect those. So I'll start first. So my thoughts, guys, is I'm really liking what I'm seeing direction-wise. I try, but I can't stop thinking about the people last year that were like, there's FMOs closing their doors the day final rule came out last year. I'm like, what an idiot. I'm sorry. I'm on the record. I'm on the record. I know exactly who posted that. Like, that's got to be, I want to frame it in my office. I want to find it. Frame it.
You should.
Text him the picture of it every morning. Be like, good morning. Good morning. The sun's up, shining.
FMO here, still alive.
But
birds are chirping.
But I say that to say, I think about that moment when that rule dropped to where we are today. It's been a roller coaster ride, right? It's been Space Mountain. It's been Splash Mountain. There's been
We
a
are
lot of
going
ups
to get
and downs.
sued by Disney for this episode.
Yeah. It is Space Mountain because
It's
you're
Space Mountain.
it's dark. You
Yep.
don't know where you are. A little bit of that.
Roller coaster's brutal, dude.
So but I feel like if I recall correctly that my message was pay attention to the things that were going on that were troubling. They need to be paid attention to. PDP, loss of commissions, things like that. But that the people that stick it out and remain calm and remain here. I was always taught in sales, you don't want to go too high, you don't want to go too low. And I think that applies to business life as well.
Absolutely.
And I'm not perfect at this by any means, but you don't want to get too high. You don't want to get too low. You want to stay right here.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was the message that I was preaching while this was all going on. And now to see a year later, it seems like things are starting to kind of move in the right direction. It feels very good because I am a big believer in that. And I think in our industry in particular, you look at all the situations or times or moments where people thought it was going away or it was the start of it going away and then just does a 180 and it starts, becoming more lucrative than ever. There's a lot of those moments. I've been hearing my entire life that Medicare is going to go away. Literally my entire life. And here we are.
Yep.
And so that would be my message, right? Is like, you need to find a way to stay here in these situations. You need to not get too high. You need to not get too low. And for the people that have been just building the last year and, being like, I'll deal with that when it comes, you've been rewarded and you're in a great position. I think I'd put us in that category.
Absolutely. I think those are, I like the roller coaster analogy a lot too, because we're not ever going to have the future. No one's going to give you a play-by-play of, hey, here's how the next 24 months the Medicare industry is going to play out. Like, you're never going to get that. Even when you talk to someone who might be telling you they already have that information or they know where things are going, nobody knows exactly how things are going to play out over the next 12, 24 months, 36 months, 48 months. I have taken the position after being on this roller coaster for as long as I have, to have an extinction level event, it would really have to be, in my opinion, and I'm sorry to disappoint all of you Chicken Little agents out there, but it would have to be a one-payer system, something truly significant to come in and really gut the industry to the point that I'm super concerned about the future of our business, of my future as a Medicare agent. Outside of that, I'm not really worried about it. And then again, you look at some of these smaller details like what we covered today, and it's like, this is a green light, baby. Mm-hmm. This is a green flag. This is good news. So, I have never been as optimistic. Even, I was definitely a little nervous coming into this year. I think AEP was a little rough. We saw that radical proposal from CMS. I think December, January there was some nervousness, but at this point in the year, after seeing what I have seen, that we got a new administration, we have a new CMS administrator, everything looks good, in my opinion. I'm seeing green lights, green flags. So, stay tuned. We'll keep you updated as always, right here at the seven figures or bust podcast. We want to try to synthesize this information and get it out to you guys as quickly as we can. So, but as of right now, everything's looking good. Smooth sailing.
Love it. A large meteorite is what you're saying.
Yes.
Event. That's got to be one big rock.
That's that's what I'm looking for. I'm not worried about these little, shooting stars. You guys see these shooting stars in the sky and you're like, that's going to kill me. It's like, no. Whoa, burning up in the atmosphere, just like we thought it would,
Once you tell me the moon is about to fall on me, be like, the moon is not, it's not floating in space anymore. It's falling towards us. I'm like, oh, whoa, that's a concern. You see it coming down. It's like,
Boom. Just lands right on you. Christian Brindle killed in a moonfall.
That would be a way to go. That
would be.
That'd be never gonna happen again, probably.
He tried to catch the moon. I got it.
Guys, appreciate you guys watching all the way to the end, episode 85. Make sure to, if you're watching on the live stream, as we mentioned earlier, comment for a chance to win on Freebie Friday. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. We certainly do appreciate your support. And make sure to subscribe and leave a 5-star review if you're able to do so on any audio-only platforms you might be listening to us on. Spotify comes to mind. Apple Podcasts comes to mind.
Yes.
We appreciate your guys' support. And as always, wishing you guys nothing but massive success. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks, everybody.